This video should help you navigate through all the directions on this page, and also it will help you start the close read of The Lost Boys of Sudan that you will finish with your teacher during your synchronous learning time. So first of all, it says that you need a copy of the Work to Become Effective Learners anchor chart. So let's go ahead and click on that and open it. While that is opening, we also need the Lost Boys of Sudan article with close read note catcher included. So we're going to open that as well. Now remember that like everything else that is continual, you are going to put your name on it and you are going to move it to your Long Walk to Water folder that you made the other day. Once it pops up, I'll move it into my Long Walk to Water folder and then click Move here. Okay, so now let's see what our next direction is. Review the directions. Review learning targets. I can determine central ideas and how they are developed in the Lost Boys of Sudan informational text. Number 2, I can objectively summarize the Lost Boys of the Sudan informational text. Now, we are going to focus on the first learning target during this video. Let's look at our step 2 directions. Review this anchor chart before you dive into close reading. What strategies from this list do you frequently use while reading? What strategies have you used so far in this unit? So let's look at this. Read small chunks of text slowly and think about the gist. So I think that you guys have been doing that so far with your novel. Reread the text one sentence at a time. Oof, I know I do that when I get confused. Underline things they understand or know about. Have you guys been underlining anything in Sora? That might be something you can do. Circle or underline words you do not know. Use strategies to figure out the meanings of words they do not know. This you have been doing a lot during your entrance tickets. You might talk with your partner or group. Obviously, you can't do that while you're working independently, but in class, that is your purpose with your synchronous learning time. Ask questions, listen to questions. So these are really ideas that we use during our synchronous learning time. You might also go back to the text to find answers or write notes or answer questions about the text. So think about which of those you've used. And then we can go to our step 3 directions. It says, although collaboration looks very different in the digital classroom as opposed to an in-person setting, collaborate is a habit of character. Please fill out the section of the Work to Become Effective Learners anchor chart. So that's what we already opened that discusses collaboration. So let's find collaboration. Here we go. I collaborate. So go ahead and fill out what it looks like or sounds like to collaborate in an online environment. Pause the video and type your answers into your document that you opened and then restart this video. Give yourself about 2 to 3 minutes to do that and then come back to the video. All right, welcome back to the video. Now you're ready to do the close read of this article. While you're reading, use the strategies in the anchor chart above. Okay, so what you are going to do is you had already opened this article. So let's look at this together. And remember, I'm going to bring you back here one more time. Our goal is I can determine the central ideas and how they are developed in the Lost Boys of the Sudan informational text. All right, so let's start reading and we're going to look for those central ideas. Since 1983, the Sudan People's Liberation Army, or SPLA, and the Sudanese government have been at war in southern Sudan. The conflict has already claimed more than 500,000 lives and displaced huge numbers of people. Among these were at least 20,000 children, mostly boys, between 7 and 17 years of age, who were separated from their families. These, quote, lost boys of the Sudan trekked enormous distances over a vast, unforgiving wilderness, seeking refuge from the fighting. Hungry, frightened, and weakened by sleeplessness and disease, they crossed from the Sudan into Ethiopia and back, with many dying along the way. The survivors are now in camps in Kenya, the Sudan, and Uganda. Let's pause there for a moment and let's talk about this. So I noticed some numbers. We see how many lives people were displaced, people died, and over 20,000 children were separated from their families. And they had to walk to these other countries that you looked at on the map at the beginning of the unit. Now I'm already looking down here and I noticed that we're going to look for the main idea of paragraph 2. So let's go ahead to paragraph 2, but before we do that, let's talk about the main idea of paragraph 1. So paragraph 1 is basically a history, right? It says since 1983, so I see a date. And then it says survivors are now in camps. So it's given me a bit of a history. And what did we learn in that history? That these boys were displaced because of a war in southern Sudan between the Sudanese government and the Sudan People's Liberation Army. Side note, this article must be a couple years old because that conflict actually was settled, and there are now two countries. There's Sudan and South Sudan. So they solved their conflict by actually creating a new country. But anyway, the Lost Boys. So let's go ahead and see what is in paragraph 2. This extraordinary exodus has its origins in traditional forms of migration. Traditional forms of migration. After being initiated into manhood, young adolescent boys in southern Sudan have generally been quite mobile. Organized into small groups of their peers, they would leave home for a period to look after cattle. Or they might head for the towns or cities to go to school or to seek their fortune before eventually returning home. In addition, at times of stress, families all over Africa send their children elsewhere to find safety, food, work, and schooling. Okay, so let's talk about the main idea here. So what is this paragraph mostly talking about? Let's take a moment and think. I'm going back to key details in here to see what's going on. So it says traditional forms of migration, that adolescent boys in southern Sudan have been quite mobile, and that they were organized into small groups of their peers and they would leave home for a while. So the main idea is really about how this traveling together, these boys traveling together, was not unusual in certain contexts in Sudan. So let's just say groups of boys traveling together on their own was not unusual in Sudan during certain periods of time. That's interesting. Okay. Well, now that I have that main idea, let me just think critically for a moment. I'm wondering how often this happened. That's a wonder that I have. Was that really something all over Sudan? And is it really, this last sentence says, in times of stress, families all over Africa send their children elsewhere. So I'm wondering how frequent that is, or if that's a little bit too general. Well, anyway, until we deal with my wondering, let's go ahead and find some supporting details. So how did I get this main idea? Well, what was one example of groups of boys traveling together in Sudan? So it says, organized into small groups of peers, they would leave home for a period to look after cattle. So let's go ahead and click on that, and we can copy it. You can also go to Edit, Copy, and then let's go ahead and paste this here. Again, because that's directly from the text, I need to make sure to put quotation marks. What's another detail? It says they might head to towns or cities to go to school or seek their fortune. Is that another detail that says it wasn't unusual for groups of boys to travel together on their own? So let's go ahead and copy this again and paste it. and put our quotation marks. Okay, so let's recap. I found the main idea of this paragraph by going back and rereading and thinking about what it really talked about here. I had my clue in my first sentence, traditional forms of migration, but I put that in my own words by saying groups of boys traveling together on their own was not unusual in Sudan during certain periods of time. What are my details that prove that? That they would leave home for a period to look after cattle, or they might head to towns to go to school. Those are my um, specific details from the text. So now let's make sure that you're organized and ready. Write your name at the top of your document. You can go ahead and move this into your folder. Again, my drive doesn't have that folder anymore, but you will find your folder that says Lost Boys of Sudan, or I'm sorry, Long Walk to Water folder. And then you'll click Move here. Then you should go back to your Canvas page and make sure that you join your teacher during your work time, synchronous work time. Have a wonderful day and be ready to pull this document back up during synchronous work time.